Okay, this is an introduction to how to write a conclusion for your labs. Now, labs are different kind of than the tasks that we do in class. They're more formal. And so there's a particular procedure and protocol that we'd expect you to follow that's a little bit different than what we have in our interactive science notebook. So our interactive science notebook is all about your thoughts and, kind of how you're engaging in the concepts and kind of revising your ideas. And so there's a lot of my thoughts and our conclusion. There's going to be none of that in the lab. So in the lab, you can see that there is a particular structure. So no use of personal pronouns. So if you are having to write something and saying, we heated the popcorn, you need to take the we out of it and then focus on, what you're doing. You're a popcorn. So like make popcorn the subject. Popcorn was heated. So you have to kind of think about your structure sentence so that there's no we, our group, the class, all of that. We should not be any people in this experiment. It's all about the popcorn and the microwaves and the air poppers. So make those the starting points of your subject if you're having difficulty writing the sentence. Sorry, my laryngitis is still somewhat here. Okay, so the rerun plus conclusions, they are typed. So you're going to be typing this document and you're going to attach it to your handout. So you got your handout, and then behind that will be the conclusion. So once again, the conclusion is the end piece, so it should be in the back, not the front. Now, the way that I structure these are all color-coded. And what that really does is it helps you and I have an easy conversation about like, how is the flow of your argument clear to follow, and are all the pieces of your argument there? And so the color coding can help you see that, as well as there's certain parts of your argumentation that I would expect to be more robust. And so the green section, which is the reflect part, would be larger because that's going to have your data. And so I can kind of see if you just got one sentence, that would be something that would be kind of like, so for example, with a student, and this is a seventh grade, so if you have a color printer, you will print it out, and you can see that, and you can see this is a very small green section, so that would make me think there is something missing here, and that would also kind of, the kids should know when they only have like, two sentences, that is probably lacking something in there. So this is another seventh grade students. Once again, if you don't have a color printer, you will just underline using the appropriate colors, and so you can kind of see the structure here. And you can see that there's a little bit more here. So I'm thinking, oh, I may have to read over it, but at least I can kind of see that there's a little bit more data and kind of discussion there around that particular section, which is really a critical part of the lab process. So since this is our first lab, I'm going to be providing you some sentence starters. You're not required to use this, but this might help you. And then anything that's underlined, so all of this part here that's underlined, you're going to delete it after you do it. And then also this whole box, you're going to basically take this whole box and delete it. Okay, so I should not see that in your final thing. So basically what you're going to do, the rerun method, is recall. So in the lab, you're going to briefly state what was done. So for example, let's say it was the washers, let's say the washer and, the washers in hot water. So in this lab, instead of saying we put washers in hot water, you'd be like, in this lab, washers were put in hot water and observed for temperature. Okay, so it's really brief. You're not going over and restating the entire procedure. You're just giving me a basic thing, and then you can just type right in there. So it'd be like the washer, and if you type right in there and you have a color printer, it's already what you need in the terms of the color, and then you would just delete that part. So the washer, oopsie, don't have it in bold. The washer, blah, blah, blah. Once again, yours is not about a washer, it's about popcorn, but I'm just kind of giving you the structure of how you do it. And then explain the purpose. So the purpose is like, why did we do it? And if you look at your lab, there's usually a focus question or some overlining purpose. And this one actually has a purpose right there. So you're going to kind of write the purpose of the lab right there. So we're kind of focusing our reader on this is what we're trying to investigate. And then if you have a hypothesis for the lab, you can look there and you're going to restate the hypothesis. So instead of saying, if popcorn is popped, you're going to go, the hypothesis was when popcorn was popped, then we expected, whatever. Or you can just go right into your revised claim. So I could say, you can say here, instead of the hypothesis, we can just talk about it. Maybe I'm going to change this. I'm going to go, the claim is, da, 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 da. So you're going to give me the claim, and this could be your revised claim. So maybe you thought originally it was the microwave, and it ended up being, the stovetop hopper. So you're going to be, the claim is whatever heated first. And then this part here is kind of like your claim, evidence, reason section that we talk about all the time. That's your claim. It could be revised from your original hypothesis. Okay, so we want your current thinking. And then your evidence. So evidence is like numbers. You've got data here. So I want to see some comparisons about, what do you think? Why did you think that, the stovetop popper was the fastest? If that's what your data showed. So once again, and then I want you to connect it with the hypothesis with the science. So our lab here is around convection, conduction, radiation. And so once again, that's about the purpose. So you're looking at the purpose when you're writing this reflect section. You're looking at the title and you're like, how does my data kind of connect in with this idea of convection, conduction, and radiation? So you should be making connections between those and talking about that in this green section. And once again, this green section, the reflect section, should be probably your biggest section of your lab. Now, uncertainty, there's not always uncertainty in the lab, but sometimes there is. So for example, when we were doing the lab, or the task when we were doing the different heating and cooling of sand and soil and water, and some people's graphs had these little dips, we would expect as we were heating it up that it would continue to heat up and then it would kind of go down in some pattern, but people had some kind of irregularities in their data. And so you would discuss that if you saw something that was unusual in your data, or for example, someone forgot to turn on, the stopwatch in the beginning, so our numbers might be a little bit off, so it was kind of an approximation. So it's talking about human error, it could be machine error, and sometimes there's no uncertainty. And so I would at least like you to say for the beginning, there was no uncertainty if there wasn't any, so that I know you've at least thought about it and kind of stated that. And then the last thing is new questions. So science is not like, we've got the answer, great, we're done. It's often like, as we research stuff, it invites more questions and more inquiry. And so what I want you to do is I want you to come up with some other question that might be based on this that makes you kind of think like, well, maybe I could conduct an experiment about this, or I'm wondering about this. And so this is the required section. So I want you to come up and think about a question or some wonder that you have. And then the real life application is like, how does understanding convection, conduction, and radiation, how do they apply to the natural world? I mean, the real life outside of the classroom. Or why might this particular piece be helpful in your own daily life? So it doesn't necessarily deal with your daily life, but just why is it, but it could be in this case, but trying to make some connections with the science content and the world outside, which there really is no separation in reality. But we want you to make that, at least when you talk about explaining it. So I hope this is helpful in terms of an introduction. And once again, you will delete all of these kind of things, so I wouldn't see that. And you actually, if you want to, you could just type in here and be like, a real life application, so that you're not even having these parts here. So this part is typically doesn't show up at all, but this is your first lab, so I'm kind of be a little flexible in that. And once again, you can see the colors are in that order, and those are the colors that everyone's going to use, so that I can clearly see that you have all the parts and it makes sense, and it's organized and with lots of good argumentation. So once again, don't forget, when you get to the reflect section, data, that means you're looking at numbers, you're arguing from evidence, okay, or observations. In some cases, it's not always actual numbers. Okay, so I hope that's helpful, and once again, this is your first rerun, and good luck with it. You will be doing lots of these in the future. And yeah, I think it really kind of helps. Okay, take care.